We all have a right to decent social housing. We have a right to be heard, and we have a right to be able to live in peace and harmony with each other.
We've all our own say.
I think I have our relevance, but I don't think we really understand what our human rights are. We're not really aware of what our human rights are.
No, it's not something I think about or know anything about.
No, I really haven't a clue what my basic human rights would be.
Well, I don't really know what my rights are.
I don't know anything about human rights.
Everyone's entitled to human rights, but unfortunately, I've never been told much about what our human rights are.
Everybody has a right to speak.
I would say that human rights, for me and my family, being as I'm disabled, the disabled, it seems these days, have to try and fight for everything. Whereas all the authorities know who is disabled, and unless you ask, you don't get.
What about the MPs at Stormwood? Have they any interest in me or anybody else? I don't know. If I was a Peter, I'd go up and lift the whole of them for loitering.
At the moment, I really don't think that people on the Shankill have any human rights, because I think their human rights have been taken off them when the government and the likes of the housing executive decide to come along and tell us that we can be moved out and they can take over your house.
What came into my mind with human rights was all the Catholic issues. I thought Catholics was all the ones that had the human rights. I didn't realise we had so many human rights until I started a course on a Thursday night.
I'd love to think I had the right to decide that houses went up on the Shankill instead of apartments.
Some of the rights I've been learning in the class would be the rights to better communities, the rights to better housing.
It's the right to speak and ask for something.
The right to be heard, the right to proper housing, and the right to proper health. So that's the reason.
Some of the human rights that I'm aware of is just, your free speech, really.
Well, we've a right to speak, we've the right to say what we want to say, and we've a right to have things that we need in the estate.
I think everyone needs to learn some bit about their human rights. It's not something that a lot of people knows about at the minute, but if a lot of people would get interested in it and learn some things about it, then they would understand how things work a wee bit more and what they can do to better themselves.
I think in Northern Ireland very often we think of human rights in terms of civil and political human rights. What the project I'm working for focuses on is economic and social human rights, and these are maybe ones that people aren't so aware of. But just to reiterate that underlying all of those rights is the right for people to participate in decision making about any services that government is obliged to provide. The duty human rights law puts on government is that in relation to each of those rights, the right to education, the right to health, the right to play, whatever it may be, the obligation it places on government is they must always be improving services. People really were not aware at all what their rights are, and they were very upfront about that. It was also quite clear that those who had taken part in the development programme were a little more assured of what their rights were and how it connected into local issues. It very much emphasised a criticism that has been made of many governments, and that is their lack of attention on human rights education. Governments are supposed to take steps to gradually improve human rights education to all members of society, but I think it particularly is important that those who are most vulnerable and most in need know what their rights are.
We were actually surprised with the amount of people that showed an interest in what the group was trying to do through the human rights. And we're going to send a copy of this programme to every MLA at Stormont, every councillor in Belfast City Council and every resident in Lower Shankill to make them aware of the issues that the people are fighting against here.
I think this programme will be, at the very least, a first step for the people of the Lower Shankill to get their voices heard. I think it will be part of an ongoing process whereby at each stage where they start to actually put their rights into action, at each stage that will be recorded, and that a wide audience will actually hear what they're saying, and that the people of that area mean business and they want change.
If anybody watching this programme has any views or would like to learn more about human rights issues, call into the office at 77 Shankill Road any time and you'll be given information and any help that you require.
Human rights can be used as tools to make government more answerable or more accountable to people on the ground. Something that many people said during the interviews where they have the right to be heard. And I think to a large extent human rights is very much about getting the right tools to ensure you are heard. Another underlying value of human rights, which I particularly like, each individual must be treated with the utmost dignity and respect. And if anybody's to take anything away from learning about human rights, I would hope that would be one of the main things that they take away, that each individual in this society or in this world must be treated with respect and with dignity. And I think people in areas which have suffered quite a lot, whether through troubles or poverty or whatever, recognise very keenly when they are not treated with respect and dignity.